This is Kenny with Just the Right Angle with a special broadcast happening today. It is Thursday, February 20th. I'll let folks know while I'm here this evening there will be the Pulaski County Republican Committee meeting. That is still ongoing. There has been an Arctic blast that has come through and frozen some of the roads. Yesterday, a lot of places were closed. Today, there's a few places that are still closed. But the Arkansas legislature is still planning on meeting, and they have already had some committee meetings, and they are going to have the regular Senate, which is going to meet in a few minutes. The piece of legislation they are going to talk about is SB189. And that bill is a bill that the chance to legalize, to make ivermectin over the counter. Now, ivermectin is a drug that Fauci and the mainstream media did everything to try to silence and suppress because it was actually stopping the Fauci flu. And our state media had a part in that too. They falsely claimed that there were people reporting in sick and having to call poison control because they were taking ivermectin. Now that was actually the horse paste, which it turns out you can take the horse paste too in small dosages, but it has some other items in it, and so a lot of people were kind of hesitant about the horse paste. I actually took a little bit of the horse paste when COVID first came out. It passed, it would allow people to buy this over the counter. Hopefully, there won't be any hiccups with this bill. They won't try to sabotage it or poison pill it, as they say, and it'll just sail through. So there could be a lot of debate, or it could just be passed on, few comments, and it go through. That's what I'm hoping for. So we all should be hoping for. So it doesn't look like, looks like Facebook is kind of locked in on me. When the Senate starts, of course, they'll have a prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. They'll have a few other items, and then they will go right to the bill, the pieces of legislation. You can share this on Just the Right Angle. This is on Just the Right Angle and Rumble, so you can text this. I'm actually fixing to text people right now. I'm posting this on the Facebook, as well as other media outlets. And of course, this is piggybacking off the Arkansas legislative broadcast, but this one allows people to comment. You can see other comments. And that's the Senate that's fixing to convene. They may be a day or two late. Now I'm just kind of texting this out to folks, especially on Twitter. Riley Gaines was different issue. She talked about this, and rightfully so.
Senate will be called to order. Are there any requests for leave at this time? Senator Kroll, you're recognized.
Senator Bryant, Senator Flowers, and Senator Murdoch. Leave.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
So first, the call to make sure they have a quorum.
Leave. Bryant, Caldwell. I'm sorry, it's Bryant, leave. Boyd, Bryant, leave. Caldwell, Clark, Crowell, Davis, Dees, Dismayne, Dotson, English, Flippo, Flowers, leave. Gilmore, Hammer, Hester, Hickey, Hill, Irvin, Blake Johnson, Mark Johnson, King, Letting, Love, McKee, Murdoch, leave. Payton, Penzo, Petty, Rice, Scott, Stone, Stubblefield, Sullivan, Tucker, Wallace.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. If everyone in the chamber and in the galleries would please rise, we will be led in prayer by Senator Kroll, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Senator Kroll, you're recognized.
Dear Lord, thank you so much for today. Thank you so much for the freedom.
Kroll, and for those words. Ladies and gentlemen in the galleries, welcome to your Arkansas State Senate. It is our expectation that each of you will exercise proper decorum and govern yourselves accordingly during today's proceedings. Without objection, the rules will be suspended and the Senate will dispense with the reading of the journal. The morning hour has now begun. Are there any announcements or introductions at this time? Senator Kroll, you're recognized.
I would like to take a moment and recognize a young lady up there. She has shadowed me this whole week and has been blessed by all the senators and this nice weather. Kaylin Jeffries, she's going to go to University of Louisiana Tech and go political science, but she has opened her eyes to a lot of things that can be done for politics, and give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Senator Kroll. And that round of applause, young lady, was for putting up with Senator Kroll this week. Any other announcements, introductions? Senator Wallace, you're recognized.
Thank you, Governor. Members, we've got 2 state senators from Mississippi, and I would like to ask for permission to introduce them and to allow them to sit on the floor with us today. And we have Senator Ben Sugar, who is a lifelong friend of my son. And we have Senator Trey McLaughlin.
Tyler McConnell.
Say that again.
Tyler McConnell.
I messed that one up, Tyler McLaughlin. And I've asked him 3 times, so that's lick on me. And I'd like to introduce both of them and welcome them into the Senate today. And Governor, with that, I'd just like permission for them to sit on the floor.
Thank you, Senator Wallace. And gentlemen, welcome to the Arkansas State Senate. It's always great to have our neighbors with us. Any other introductions or announcements at this time? If not, Madam Secretary, are there items at the desk?
Will your committee on engrossed bills, to whom was referred Senate Bill 189, compare the engrossed copy with the original and find the same correctly engrossed.
Public Health.
Committee on engrossed bills, to whom was referred Senate Bill 212 by Senator Hammer, compare the engrossed copy with the original and find the same correctly engrossed.
State agencies.
Will your committee on insurance and commerce, to whom was referred Senate Bill 94 by Senator Dodson, recommend do pass.
Calendar.
Committee on insurance and commerce, to whom was referred Senate Bill 236 by Senator Boyd, recommend do pass.
Calendar.
Committee on Insurance Commerce, to whom was first Senate Bill 237 by Senator Boyd, recommend do pass.
Calendar.
Committee on Insurance Commerce, to whom was first Senate Bill 240 by Senator Hill, recommend do pass.
Calendar.
Committee on Insurance Commerce, to whom was first Senate Bill 242 by Senator Hill, recommend do pass.
Calendar.
Committee on Insurance, Commerce, to whom was referred House Bill 1193 by Representative Kavanaugh, recommend do pass.
Calendar.
Committee on Joint Budget, to whom was referred Senate Bill 75 by Joint Budget, recommend do pass as amended number 1.
Calendar.
Senate Bill 262 by Senator Penzo to amend the corporate practice of medicine doctrine and to authorize a licensed medical professional who owns a medical corporation to maintain ownership upon an inactive license or retirement. Senate Bill 262.
Public Health.
Senate Bill 263 by Senator Crowell and Representative Schultz to increase the homestead property credit. Senate Bill 236.
Revenue and
262.
Revenue and Tax.
263. Senate Bill 264 by Senator Irving to establish the Arkansas Primary Care Payment Improvement Working Group. Senate Bill 264.
Public Health.
Senate Bill 265 by Senator Irving to reduce and modify the membership of the Licensing Committee relating to wastewater and the Licensing Committee relating to solid waste and to eliminate the apprenticeship license from solid waste licensing. Senate Bill 265.
Public Health. Any other business to come before the body in the morning hour? If not, the morning hour has expired. We will now begin the business agenda, beginning with Senate Resolution 26. Senator Hester.
Let's go and see if I can find approximately where it's going to be on the agenda. Now, they may bounce around the agenda a little bit. They often do this. Well, maybe they already did pass it.
Senate Resolution 26 by Senator Hester to authorize recesses of either or both chambers for periods of 4 consecutive days or
I may have
longer.
messed up.
Senator Hester, you're recognized.
Thank you, members. This is mostly for us when we decide to take spring break. So if you want to be able to take spring break here in a few weeks, this is what gives us the ability to do it. If you don't, vote no. If you are for us being able to break for spring break. Now, we discussed this early on in session. This is the actual resolution that would allow that to happen. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the senator? If not, all those in favor of Senate Resolution 26, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Senate Resolution 26 is adopted.
So it's been re-referred back
Amendment
to committee.
1 to House Bill 1007.
Amendment 1 to House Bill 1007.
Senator Rice.
Well, that's the way the sausage
That's just a drafting error that my friend Senator Tucker caught, and we amended in committee, and my bill, and it's Representative Puryear's bill, but my bill on this end, my amendment. Thank you.
All those in favor, Amendment 1 to House Bill 1007, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
Looks like that's about
Ayes
it.
have it. Amendment is adopted. Please send to engrossing.
I don't know what's
Senate
going on.
Bill
Let me check on the House
87.
and see what's going on.
Senate Bill 87 by Senator Mark Johnson to amend the law concerning county planning
When this comes
to
up in
create
health,
a penalty for
I'll try and
violating a
make
subdivision ordinance and to amend the law concerning the
broadcast
membership
for it.
of a county planning board in certain instances.
Senator Mark Johnson, you're recognized to present your bill.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, every now and then I think we need to have an award for the most confusing bill to come before the General Assembly, and I say this is at least a nominee. Some of you may have heard from your county judges or other county officials that this is a terrible bill. But before you decide whether it's a terrible bill or a good bill, let me clarify one thing. This bill only applies to one county, and that's the one we're sitting in right now. And for Senator Tucker and Senator Love and Senator English and my other colleagues in Pulaski County, if you have questions, I'll be thrilled to try to clarify what this does. And everyone else can just kind of listen because it does not affect your county. Now, we allow under state law, we have permissive legislation that allows counties to create planning boards analogous to our city planning commissions, which have zoning and other land use regulations in their incorporated areas. But we also allow counties to do this, but it's permissive, it's not required. In Pulaski County, we've had a few problems. There's currently a concerted effort going on, which many of my constituents feel will lead to county-wide zoning. And some of you may say, gosh, that would just be wonderful. We have county-wide zoning, where in the rural areas, we'd have the same kind of land use restrictions that we have in cities. Well, I live out in the country for a reason, and many of you in this room live out in the country for a reason. So we had an issue that came to my attention that in Pulaski County, a majority, I think it's about 2/3 of the members of the Pulaski County Planning Board do not live in the area that their jurisdiction covers.
Oh, wow.
They live in one of the cities. And consequently, it's analogous to the old argument, taxation without representation. In this case, it's zoning and land use without representation. There's nothing in the current law that would keep the county judge from appointing only people that live in the cities to exercise this authority over the unincorporated areas. Now this, if you really want to think about it, this would be analogous to land use planning in North Little Rock being decided by the Little Rock Planning Commission, or land use in North Little Rock being decided by the Sherwood Planning Commission. So for the second time, and I told Senator Rice I would say this at least 3 times, this only applies to Pulaski County. I believe there are only about 15 counties in the state that have any form of a county planning board, and all but I think 3 have quite limited jurisdiction. Now, if you'll look at the bottom of, starting on line 2 on page 2, a county with a population of 200,000 or more to the most recent federal decennial census that contains 8 municipalities or less shall select members of the county planning board. So what that means is that the larger counties like Benton and Washington that have more than 8 municipalities, this doesn't apply to them either. Now, if you think about it, Washington County is probably a good example. I can't even name all the little towns in Washington County, but y'all, I think Senator Dees knows them. There's a lot of them, and we're not trying to affect them either. But a vast amount of Pulaski County, because we all think, well, it's the big dog because it's so populated, but the vast majority of the land area of Pulaski County is unincorporated, a large portion of it. If you look out where I live in Ferndale, and people in Roland and Natural Steps and Little Italy and all that part of the county where it's unincorporated, it's quite a bit of land of the county. But we've got a majority of members of this board that are trying to institute some things that are not desirable to my constituents out in that part of the county. Now, I don't know about the opposite corner, the southeast corner, but it's also unincorporated like that. And some of the areas in the northern part of the county are. Yeah. And we're simply saying that if you're going to have a board, it should represent the people that are being affected. Now,
the Lake Mama watershed.
Because of some questions that were brought up, and I thought they were legitimate, so I amended the bill. And here's what I changed. Instead of it just being that if you have to live in the unincorporated area to serve on this board, now only 2/3 of the voting members of the county planning board shall reside in unincorporated area. So this is to make sure that those that are making the rules that tell us how to live out in the area where I live are my colleagues. They're my people that understand and that they're represented. And so I've turned the status quo on its head. Instead of 2/3 of the people living in Hillcrest, the Heights, or Jacksonville, they live in the unincorporated part of Pulaski County.
Yes, that's a good bill.
There is a section 2, and I haven't had anybody complain about this. And it says that a person who knowingly violates a subdivision ordinance requiring plat approval by county planning board is subject to that. Basically, you can't sell a parcel of land that's not platted.
When public health meets.
Without, you could be subject to a fine if you knowingly violate. I think there was a word that, and Senator Bryant's not here. He took umbrage with the word that I used in addition to knowingly. I think it's a knowingly, and I'm sorry the word escapes me at the moment, but those of you at City County Local remember that I changed the bill. I amended the bill to take that out. Flagrantly was the word, now I recall. Flagrantly. And all we're trying to do with that is say that if you do this and it was an honest mistake,
likely to be placed,
then you're not going to be fined. But we've had cases where plats would be, property would be sold without it being properly platted. And that means they can get a water meter, they can get the other things are done. And this, I actually had a county judge who had problems with the original bill, but he liked that section. He thought that was the way it should be. So, to reiterate for the third time, I told you, Senator Rice, I would tell you, if your county judge has called you and said, oh my Lord, this is a terrible bill, we don't want this, it doesn't apply to 74 of our 75 counties. Now, theoretically, if these counties grow and lose municipalities, so if there's a bunch of places in Benton and Washington County that disincorporate, and or another county grows to over 200,000 and is measured during the 2030 census, theoretically, this would apply to it. But I did pledge to the only one that's brought that point up to me that I would work with them in the future to clean this up to make sure it didn't apply to them. Now, anytime we have county jurisdiction and city jurisdiction, we're going to have some friction. Many of you live in an unincorporated area, and you know you like being out there in the country, and you know that your neighbors like being out there in the country, and they don't want planning jurisdictions telling them what to do. This is very limited in its scope, and it's specifically done to make sure that whatever is decided, whatever a board like this determines, that you know that it was a decision made by members who live in the area and share the concerns of people in the unincorporated and rural areas. So for the fourth time, this only affects one county, and I will fight forever to make sure that it's limited to that, or someone in a similar situation, which at this time we don't have another county where this is a problem. So with that, Madam President, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from any senator, regardless of county? Senator Payton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I think I agree with the wisdom and the fairness of making sure that the unincorporated rural areas are represented on this board.
So I'll turn camera off.
So with that said, why would we limit it to one county?
Well,
let these people
Senator Payton, one of my favorite lines is, politics is the art of the possible.
On this.
I have a specific problem. I would think that a good county judge would make his appointments based on that logic, that the people that are being affected would be the people that should be represented. But it's not in the law to require that. So while I think it would be okay, considering you have wise county judges that ascribe to the same logic that you just stated, but I don't know that we can count on that. And while I in the long run, in the future, and in the perfect world, I would absolutely agree that that's the way it should be. But we're trying to deal with a specific problem here, and so I'm trying to get this taken care of. And then maybe in the long run, we can look at this whole, what I call friction between cities and counties on controlling land use.
Okay, if I could have a follow-up, Madam President. Section 1 has language that would seem to limit it to a certain county. But Section 2, is it your presentation today that only affects one county?
Section 2, regarding with the plat, if you improperly, you don't file a plat and prove that.
So you repeatedly said this bill only applies to one county, but it would appear to me Section 2 would apply to every county.
I stand corrected. I believe that it would, and I think that's a positive thing, Senator Payton. But it does, it would apply, I believe, to every county.
Okay, and if I may continue on
because that has nothing to do with. Well, again, the answer is yes.
So the idea that Section 1 may be prudent, and we need to convince our county judges that would be a prudent line of action, to appoint members from unincorporated areas. And you yourself stated that it could be a foot in the door, or down the road it might need to be a change to affect more counties. With all that said, I mean, wouldn't it be wise for us to listen to our county judges who are not yet convinced that this is only affecting one county, or maybe they're reading Section 2 and they're worried about its application? But shouldn't we do the same thing and listen to the counties?
I don't know if I could follow that one. I tend to agree with you on most of your logic, Senator Payton, but in this one, I'm not so sure that I do. Okay. I think that we have to deal with the world. I would say that this is positive for the specific situation that it addresses. I cannot help the fact that, and let's be honest with each other, the Association of Counties is going to send out a blast, and they're going to scare everybody to death, and I think that's what's happened. But this bill is very narrowly drawn for a reason, and it's to specifically address an issue where you have people living in the Heights and Hillcrest telling people out in the Roland and Ferndale and Natural Steps and other unincorporated areas how to live.
And I appreciate the situation you find yourself in Pulaski County in, but we've established that half of this bill does apply to the other 74 counties. And as far as I know, sitting here today, it may be that that's the part they have a problem with. So how do we know which part they have a problem with?
Well, to clarify, the Section 2 doesn't just apply to Pulaski County, but it does only apply to counties that have a county planning board.
Thank you.
About 60 counties, I believe, have no kind of county planning board. 3 have, shall we say, a more substantial county planning board, and I guess that would leave the other 12 that have a very limited county board that does more limited activities. But for the vast majority of the state, that Section 2 would not apply either. Although I think if you're going to sell a piece of property, most of the time, if it's in an area that has been platted, the plat should be filed. If it's just way out in the country, a meets and bounds is probably adequate.
Thank you, Madam President.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Payton. Senator Tucker, you're recognized for a question, and then Senator Urban.
Thank you, Madam President. My first question has already been handled eloquently by Senator Payton, which was, if the rationale works for Pulaski County, why does it not work for every county? So I appreciate Senator Payton for handling that. I got a few questions. I guess I'll start with, as you've established.
Excuse me, Senator. Could I answer that more specifically, more so than Senator Payton asked it? I had one county judge that pointed out that he had a member of his planning board, a very good person that was the chairman, did a good job, lived in the unincorporated area, and his property got annexed. So under the bill, the way I originally crafted it, that gentleman who was a good public servant, volunteer in the community, serving on this board, would instantly be ineligible to serve in that position, which was the reason that I amended the bill to change it to 2/3 of the membership must live in the unincorporated area rather than just the entirety of it. So I hope that clarifies that. And yes, in some cases it should apply, but again, we're dealing with practicalities here and not trying to create an unintended consequence that doesn't exist in the other 60 or so counties. And I'm sorry that I interrupted you, but I wanted to clarify the question you thought I answered to Senator Payton.
Well, that example you gave would apply equally to Pulaski County and other counties as well. So I'm not sure that was responsive to that question, but my question is, as we've established, Section 1 only applies to Pulaski County, and so is it not special legislation?
Well, these numbers change. Special legislation would say this only applies in Pulaski County, but we have lots of situations in the code that allow things that are in given situations. And I'll use my favorite example of that is we allow cities in Arkansas to have an additional penny sales tax for a municipal park if they have a municipal park of at least 1,000 acres that's located along a navigable river. Well, that applies, to my knowledge, it applies to Burns Park in North Little Rock. However, if another city along the Arkansas River were to create a 1,000-acre park, then it would apply to them too. So it's not local legislation in an absolute sense. It may only apply in this given sense today to one county, but theoretically things could change. And as some of these judges have pointed out, you know, we're a little county now, but we want to grow and be over 200,000, so it might need to be revisited at the proper time.
And that answer is true, even though you've stated your intent from the floor today would be to exclude any other county in the future that happen to meet these criteria.
Not exclude, but just like I've amended the bill once to make it work better, I would amend it again if it needed to be done to do that. I think this would be good all over the state. However, situations like the county judge I mentioned that had a good person chairing his planning board that would have been affected negatively if I had not amended the bill. I wanted to make sure we didn't have such an unintended consequence.
But did I not hear you say that you were committing for this to apply only to Pulaski County and that you would change it in the future if you needed to?
I did not know when I originally drafted the bill that it would apply to others, but we fixed a problem. I think if we could take away the law of unintended consequences, we could get through a session probably in a month and a half. But in the fact that we have issues come up that we need to adjust legislation to do its intended purpose and not just to throw out a blanket thing that would create a problem in another jurisdiction.
That's not what I asked, but I'll move on. But so my next question is, I didn't hear this part addressed. For the counties that this applies to, in theory, as we know it's only Pulaski County, the legislation says that once the person is appointed to the planning board by the county judge, then only the members of the court who represent unincorporated areas can vote to confirm that appointment.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain that, please?
It's just as clear as what you said. This would keep a majority of a quorum court from having a say over what happens out in the unincorporated areas. So in effect, it would be that if everyone, now let me clarify, Senator Tucker, that doesn't mean that the JP has to live in the unincorporated area. It just means they have to represent, part of their district would have to include the unincorporated area.
Do you know how many JPs in Pulaski County represent unincorporated areas out of the 15?
No, sir, not exactly, but I know that a vast majority of them live in one of the incorporated cities. But I know that, for example, we have one in both sides of direction, both the the northeast side and the southwest side and northwest side that straddle the line. For example, my JP lives in the unincorporated area, but JP in parts like, for example, Senator English's district represents or has both.
So we don't even know how many JP districts in Pulaski County this would apply to at this moment. But does this not segregate a quorum court that represents the entire county?
I think part of the problem here, Senator, is we have a board in place that just does that. It's segregated by city. The majority of the members don't have a dog in the fight. They're subject to the Little Rock or North Little Rock or Jacksonville planning commissions for where they live, but they get to make decisions on where I live and where my neighbors live and other people living in the unincorporated area. I consider it inherently unfair to have people that don't share our common responsibilities and obligations to have to do this. Now, I can turn this inside out and say this way. I pay Little Rock sales tax. Every time I go down Canis Road to Costco or Kroger and buy stuff, I'm paying a tax to the city of Little Rock, who does not come out and when my next door neighbor's house caught on fire, Little Rock Fire Department, ISO Class 1 Fire Department, did not show up to help put that fire out, and the house burned to the ground. So we do have lines. You know, for example, I live in the extraterritorial planning jurisdiction. Little Rock does have some authority over what I do, especially on building codes, and I'm not opposed to that. But I am opposed to the fact that people that live in a jurisdiction that has no dog in the fight as far as what we do out in the country, a majority of that board is making decisions on what we do, and they have recently proposed a land use plan, which I believe leads to countywide zoning. And if you like countywide zoning, that's fine. I don't. And that's why people live in the country.
Just two more questions, Madam President. I heard you say several times that you don't like people on the Heights and Hillcrest. I'm just, making rules for people who live in the unincorporated areas of Pulaski County. And I just am curious, are all the members of the Pulaski County Planning Board, do they live in the Heights and Hillcrest?
No, but they live in some incorporated tobacco. Those of us that live in the unincorporated areas.
Okay. So if we accept your logic, should only the senators who represent a portion of Pulaski County vote on this bill?
No, sir, that's not allowed under the law.
Okay.
Now, let me say this. I think our viewpoints and how we vote on bills often reflect whether we live in an urban area or a rural area, and that's okay. But our district lines are drawn, and I have the second largest city in the MSA in my district right now, as well as a lot of the rural area. So I try to represent both of them and take a viewpoint. But when we have bodies that have authority over people, then we want some level of representation. Under current law, all of them could be from outside the area affected. This will change it to where it would be at least 2/3 would live in an area that's affected, that's making that rule.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Senator Tucker, Senator Ervin, and then I see Senator McKee. Senator Ervin, you're first recognized.
Thank you. I appreciate all the explanation on it. So just back to that line of questioning, I'm not sure this is written in a way that would make sense if members shall be appointed by the county judge and confirmed by a majority of the members of the county quorum court representing any part of an unincorporated area of the county. That potentially could only just be one member of the quorum court who would then confirm the appointment by the county judge. And I guess that one member would be a majority of the members, but potentially, I don't know how that would work with the language you have here, because to your explanation, that could just be only one member of the quorum court that would be able to have a vote in confirmation.
Senator, I would not have put that provision in if it were going to apply to a multitude of counties. Now, we had to clean that up with the 2 amendments, but you're right. If it were a statewide application, you'd be absolutely right. And again, this is theoretical, of course, because I think most JP districts, for example, I'm sure in Stone County, you have some JP districts that are totally in an unincorporated area. I don't know if you have one in I guess it would have to be in Mountain View that would be both urban. I don't think of Mountain View as urban, but incorporated area and unincorporated area. I guess that would be the case, but clearly this just says that these representatives are appointed from and confirmed by the unincorporated representatives, and the county judge is still appointing them.
Yeah, but you said that Section 1 only applies to Pulaski County, so.
Yes, ma'am. It only applies to Pulaski County.
Right, and so if of the Pulaski County quorum court, only one of the JPs lives.
That's not the case.
Well, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
It could be.
No, ma'am. You got to remember, the JP district. Theoretically, okay. I can't tell you exact lines, but if there's a JP whose district he or she lives in an incorporated city, but he also represents an unincorporated area, he would be able to vote on the confirmation of that.
Okay.
So if you straddle the line, so to speak, your district straddles a line, one or more municipalities, but you also have some unincorporated area, you would be able to confirm. But those that live only in an incorporated, their JP district is only in an incorporated area, would not be able to vote. It'd have to be a majority of those that represent a portion of their district is an unincorporated area.
Okay. If I can ask about Section 2. So the way Section 2 reads is any person who violates a subdivision ordinance requiring plat approval by the county board before a parcel of land can be sold is subject to civil penalty. So I have a friend who owns a big house out in Ferndale area that also uses that as a wedding venue. And so would this then subject them, if they're trying to sell that house or / wedding venue, I don't think it's zoned or planned in any certain way, but would this subject them to this penalty?
I think I'm familiar with the case you're referring to, and that's definitely platted. This is something that would have been unplatted, and it would require that if the ordinance says it has to be platted, then if they violated that by selling it like with only a meets and bounds description and the plat hadn't been approved yet, then they would be subject to these fines if they knowingly did it. If it was a technical error, it would not, I mean, yes, they shouldn't do that, but that's not the same as fining them for doing it.
Okay. So if I own a piece of property in the county and there's a county planning board, I have to get approval before I sell my piece of property that it jives with the county planning commission.
If it's subject to their ordinance that requires the platting.
Okay.
If there's no such ordinance, Senator, there's no violation. It's only if it's violated. All this does is puts teeth into. If one has created such an ordinance, this is an enforcement mechanism, but it exempts someone if it was not knowingly done.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Senator McKee, you're recognized for a question.
Senator Johnson, I appreciate you bringing this bill. I think this is a very important issue. I served on the quorum court for 12 years in Garland County. always represented unincorporated areas, and so this is definitely an issue we dealt with all the time. I think that there are probably ways to solve this. I have some parts of this bill I'm very uncomfortable with. Is this something you'd be willing to, would you be willing to pull this back and work with us on this? So I think that we can find a way where it doesn't just affect one county, because I think this is probably something that every single county in the state struggles with, and how to operate these things. Is this something you'd be willing to work with us on?
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to do that. And let me, before I do that, let me say, anytime we have an issue we're trying to fix, we see it all the time, and not just related to city county stuff, but we try to fix something, and then someone's caught in the net that is absolutely, it's unintentional for us to do that. So, and let me extend that offer to other colleagues. If you've got some language or different approach to fix this, I'd be happy to. Now, I have to confess, I have looked at the possibility of going at this from a totally different direction, and that is, let's just do away with any county planning authority except for that in the incorporated areas, and do away with ETJ, because that's basically the ultimate taxation without representation, or authority without representation, because as I mentioned, I'm paying taxes to Little Rock, but they're not coming out and putting out the fire when my next door neighbor's house burns down. So I'll be happy to pull that, and I think Senator Clark will have a question, but I'll take his question as well, Madam President.
Senator Clark, you're recognized for a question.
Senator Johnson, I appreciate what you're going to do here, and I also appreciate what you're trying to do. Living in an unincorporated area all my life, we have definitely been underrepresented on planning commissions and everything else. So I very much appreciate what you're trying to do. As you work on this, keep Saline County and Garland County in mind, counties that are going to hit this number at some point. And I personally don't care what the Pulaski County judge thinks, but I do care what my county judges think and my experience. In Saline County, for instance, you exclude Benton and Bryant, and I think you can do that, and then exclude Lonsdale, Shannon Hills, et cetera. It leaves you a very small pool of people. So you're on the right track. I hope you get it exactly right. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree, and I will tell you that your county judge in Saline County has been most helpful in pointing out some unintended consequences that led to the 2 amendments that I've already added to the bill. If there are no other questions, Madam President, I will ask that the bill be pulled down, and we'll work on it some more.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. We are pulling down Senate Bill 87. We'll move now to Senate Bill 234.
Senate Bill 234 by Senator Dees, concerning the 19th Judicial District West to create an additional circuit judgeship and declare an emergency.
Senator Dees, you're recognized.
So I'm going to go.
Thank you, Madam Governor. Members, this is a bill for us to consider for an additional circuit judgeship in the 19th Judicial